Okay, so we got another great video from Discord here, and the resolution of this video is going to make it hard for us to see a lot of the face, as well as the fact that the camera is kind of close to the player, so we're not going to be able to get a full understanding of the swing, but that's okay. There's some really good things that we can take out from the swing when it comes to the use of the lower body, in particular of how that left hip doesn't properly load, and we can end up coming out of this thing with some left side low back pain, which is quite common, unfortunately, with this type of a pattern that we're going to have. So the first thing we're going to take a peek at is our head level. And so as we start address to the club, we're actually going to start to dip down underneath, which is not a bad thing to be kind of getting into the swing a little bit. Having that right shoulder come underneath the chin is a great feel to get a much more fluid transition into our first positional check. I think our club face here and where our hands are, we're a little bit underneath. But again, the camera zoom is a little close to probably give it a perfect position. But I'll be honest with you, we're not starting out all too bad. And so where we start to go wrong is our weight comes too far forward. We're starting to sway onto that back leg. And instead of having a stable base to push down on and kind of feel it like in the inside of this left foot here, what ends up happening is if we had a face-on view, we would see how our weight is shifting further and further to the player's left or behind the ball. And what ends up happening is we start to stand up as we're getting closer and closer to the end of this swing. And so the top in transition, we can just see coming back to the head how far underneath we are from our original setup. But then as we start to swing, we're actually going to start to stand back up as we get towards the top. And so this is not because we're getting taller, but this is because our back is extending. And so our head is getting higher because our back, unfortunately, is getting quite firm. And our rotation is not coming from places we want, unfortunately. And so the result that I talked about before is that left side low back pain. This is a classic swing that unfortunately will never have some of that. And so getting tall in the backswing is not a bad thing. We just got to make sure it's coming from the right spot. So as we start to transition and come down, because we're so over rotated with our back, what we need to do is we need to be able to squat and come down and then hold that position and really turn those hips through to clear. We don't say that here, and I think this is quite common for a lot of people that have that over rotation, is we end up coming forward towards the golf ball off this back red line. And so we're going to see that forward movement, which can cause a lot of shanks, it can cause a lot of inconsistency, but most commonly is an over-the-top move. So as we're coming down, we're going to start to really see that compression inside that left side of the low back. And we're going to see how we get really far away from that blue line into impact. The thing about this is when we have so much of that rotation up top is that our lower body has to basically come forward down to where we're parallel to the golf ball, where really we should be already cleared at this point. We should see that right butt cheek starting to hit the red line. What we end up having is we start to kind of just go forward and we stand, and then we're just kind of hanging back on top of that left hip, and we're not having too much rotational force. I think if we had the resolution, we would see how the club face is probably moderately open in this position, and we're going to see a lot of kind of wrist rotation in order to try and save this with the hands as we come through. And we see at this position here, this is one of those like classic crunch. We can really start to strain that low back. I think of like Freddie Couples as a classic one where he gets into this position quite frequently, where his back can get temperamental because he comes in such a looping motion that the hips end up clearing and going forward, but then the arms don't have the ability to keep up because his hips clear so fast. So a good job with the follow through. The footwork's not bad. We can see the weight is on the outside of that right foot, and we're having quite the spin out as we go, which is a good thing from our transition as far as the weight. Unfortunately, it's not coming at a point where we have a lot of power, where in this position, we would want to see a lot of pushing down into the ground. And so as we come forward, we're going to start to see this rotation happen. And the standing back up effect is more trying to push off the ground and to lift to create that compression. What we end up having is this kind of rotation forward, the hand flip, and likely the big push or slice to the left.